Boy, we've had a wonderful turnout here today. So just want to introduce Ron Charles. He's book critic at the Washington Post, but I have a personal observation that there's no better friend of the National Book Festival outside of the Library of Congress than Ron. I mean, we've been together how many years, Ron? And he's a cheerleader for us, in addition to all his great observations about the writers and everything. So we're always glad to see you in fiction. All right. And just stay seated. Go ahead and start. Okay. All right. Thank you.
I did not expect that. Thank you very much. It's very kind of you. First, a word of thanks to our co-chairman of the festival, David Rubenstein, and the other generous sponsors who've made this event possible. If you'd like to add your financial support, there's a note in your program. We'll have time after this conversation for your questions, and I've been asked to remind you that if you come to the microphone, you will be included in the videotape of this event and become a part of the permanent collection of the library. So if you're in like a witness relocation program or something, just stay in your seat, okay? My guest today is Jennifer Egan. She's the author of several books, including Look at Me and A Visit from the Goon Squad, and which is a wildly inventive novel which won the 2011 Pulitzer Prize. Also a journalist. She's written frequently for the New York Times Magazine, and her new novel, Manhattan Beach, was published last fall. Let's start with that moment. After the success of Visit from the Goon Squad, Pulitzer Prize, rave reviews, how do you summon the courage to write something else?
Well, I wish it were only a moment when I had to contemplate that. It was many moments strung together. I think initially I didn't feel too intimidated because I thought reasonably, look, I didn't promise everyone would love everything I do. I just got lucky that time, and now I'm proceeding. And for about a year of working on the first draft, that I felt excited by what I was doing and good about it. But then I began to feel how hard it was going to be to make Manhattan Beach work, and I began to really recognize how far outside my comfort zone I had moved with that book. Not really because it's not structurally wacky like Goon Squad is,
right,
but more because since I don't really write about myself or people I know ever, the real points of contact between my life and my work are always times and places that I remember. And I hadn't realized that those are actually kind of essential to what I'm doing. But in Manhattan Beach, I moved outside of my lifetime, and I found that I had really no times and places to pull from in my memory at all. And I felt really unqualified to do that. And I thought it was going to be a disaster. And at that point, I freaked out. I really thought, wow, I can't believe it. I can't believe I'm writing a disastrous book, after having this other one turn out so well. What should I do? I thought about abandoning it. And I really was pretty serious about that. I thought, okay, you have permission to leave that book aside. But then the question was, okay, so what do I want to do?
Yes.
And the answer was, I wanted to do this. I wanted to stick with Manhattan Beach. That was sort of where my mind was going. So I hung in there.
And this is the first historical novel you'd written?
Yes. The first one that takes place outside of my lifetime,
right.
Yes.
50 years. This is your parents' lifetime?
Yeah.
Why 50 years? Why didn't you write for the 12th century or the 17th century?
Well, don't tempt me. I think really it was specifically New York during World War II that interested me. So even though it was not a time and a place from my own memory, it was a time and a place specifically that drew me into this material. I wanted to know what New York was like during the war, what it felt like to be there, and also just in America generally. I had I had notions about the way that the country pulled together, yes, the way that women were invited to do things they'd been told they couldn't do, various sort of almost cliched ideas. But I wanted to really know what it felt like. And that may have started with 9/11 and having been living in New York when that happened and experienced the sort of transformation of my landscape into a kind of war zone overnight. That may have been it. I don't know.
And how did you go about that research? I mean, some of the people were still alive.
Well, when I first started having these inclinations toward New York during World War II. It was actually about 2005. So I was working on The Keep. I hadn't even started a visit from the Goon Squad yet. And in a way, that timing was really lucky because I got involved in interviewing a lot of people in those years between 2005 and 2010 who were in their 80s then. So I collaborated on an oral history project with the Brooklyn Navy Yard and the Brooklyn Historical Society. And our goal was to interview everyone we could find who had worked at the Navy Yard. And I was especially interested in women who had worked there during the war. And I was lucky enough to be present for and to help interview about 20 ladies.
Who had this experience or something like it?
Who did all kinds of things at the Yard, ranging from office work to actual welding and riveting. These were amazing stories to hear, and and they impacted the story that I ended up writing fairly directly, not in that I used anyone that I had met, because again, that's something I not only don't do, but I sort of can't. I'm really bad at that. But the little details that they gave me, and coupled with a lot of reading that I did over the same period, in a certain way, it was almost like I amassed a sort of alternate memory bank to give me something to draw from, since I didn't have my own memories.
Right. Can you tell us about a moment of particular discovery that was surprising or delightful?
Well, I'm always drawn to this. I don't know exactly, it wasn't really a discovery about the period, but I want to mention a woman whose collection of letters was very, very important to me. Her name was Lucille Colkin. And she and her husband, Al Colkin, met. They both worked at the Navy Yard. He was a machinist and she was a ship fitter. And they had a kind of Navy Yard romance, and they married precipitously. And in one of her letters, she referred to it as from maidenhood to marriage in 3 easy months. So then she was crazy in love with Al, and he then joined the Navy and went to boot camp, and so she wrote him these wonderful letters every day that were fantastic from my point of view, because she wrote a lot about her specific work at the Yard, since he knew what she was talking about. And she also, just flirted with him and told him all kinds of little anecdotes. She was very interested in unionization. She talked about race. She really talked about all the things you hope someone will talk about from a particular time. Exactly. And then there was one letter when she fantasized about, she had had a dream that they had had a son, and that Al was changing the baby's diaper. And she said, Butch, that's what she called him. What will our lives be like? Where will we live? How many children will we have? And I thought, yeah, I wonder what'll happen to Lucy. And then I thought, wait a minute, that was 1944. There are answers to these questions. So I, of course, did what we all do when we have a question. I walked directly to the nearest computer terminal, and I Googled her. And within 30 seconds of reading this dream in her handwriting, I was reading her obituary.
Oh my gosh.
And it was so shocking. It felt like a mind should not be able to do both of those things in that amount of time.
Were you close, or had she died long before?
No, she had just died a few years before, and she had actually lived down the street from where I had lived at the time that she died. She had had 2 daughters, and it was over. And I returned to the letters, and I felt so strange reading them at first. I felt like I knew more than I should be allowed to know. As she was kind of prattling about getting a sunburn at Coney Island and putting bicarbonate of soda on it, I was thinking, I know something terrible that you don't know. Your life is going to end. So it was very strange, but ultimately I kind of forgot about it and got back into her wonderful voice. And then she went and joined Al, and so the letters ended. They were together. And I found that I really missed her. I felt like I had lost a pal that I was used to hanging out with a couple of times a week at the Brooklyn Historical Society. So I wrote an essay called Reading Lucy, which was about the uncanny power of letters to make someone feel alive. And I published it in a little collection of essays about Brooklyn by various writers. And about 3 months later, on my public email address, I got an email, and the subject line was, I am Lucy's daughter.
Oh.
Incredible. So she had 2 daughters, as I had learned in the obituary, Judy and Marge. And they and their families and I and Al, who was then in his 80s, all took a tour of the Navy Yard together.
That's great.
I mean, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, these were the kinds of adventures I was having. This was all before Goon Squad even came out.
Wow.
So, and I'm in touch with them to this day.
So
I accompanied Al with his walker back into the machine shop, which was now empty, but there was still a lot of the war left at the Navy Yard back in 2008. And I could hardly look at Al. I knew way too much about Al. And I mean, these lines from her letters would float through my head like, just a few more little kisses and an eensy-weensy pinch on the aft end. I'm like,
Such a romantic.
yeah. Well, they were working at a shipyard. And so, anyway, Al actually only passed away 2 years ago at 98, and we ended up interviewing him for the Oral History Project. It was really, it enriched my life in such a deep way, this research. It stopped feeling like research, and it just felt like living.
Friends, that's great. It seems to me that if you go back 300 years, you could get all kinds of stuff wrong, and hardly anybody would know. I mean, some scholars would know, but if you go back 50, 60 years, there are a lot of readers out there who will know. And it seems to me there are an infinite number of things to get wrong.
I'm finding that.
So how do you check? How do you do that sort of historical checking?
You know, readers are kind enough to share their discoveries.
That's too late. That's too late.
No, it isn't. Not if you keep going into more printings. No, I've fixed a lot. It's interesting. There's a lot of technology in the book because there's so much about people at work. So there's people who work at the Navy Yard. There are deep sea divers. There's a lot of mob activity, and there's a lot of shipbuilding. So interestingly, in those areas where I had to know a lot, I tended to get things right because I had worked so hard to understand the technology
It was
correctly.
the casual references that.
And I had people to help me, so I had an expert usually in each of those fields. But it was other things that I didn't know, and it's amazing. People catch everything. It turns out the 2nd Avenue elevated tracks were dismantled the year before I had them casting a shadow on my characters. So there were a lot of things like that. Oh, and actually there was kind of a big one, which is that I have a deacon in the novel who does various things, and it turns out that there was no really official deaconate in the Catholic Church at that time, so that definitely had to be fixed.
Wow.
There are still some outstanding errors that I've just heard about that I have to still fix. Apparently there were no funerals on Sunday in the Catholic Church, and I have my funeral on a Sunday. So, yeah, so it's ongoing. I kind of love having the chance to correct these things over time.
And paperback reprints and things like that?
Yeah, just every time I keep putting them in, and if there's ever a chance, they run them through with the next iteration.
Nice. I was talking to Deborah Harkness, a historical novelist, and she was talking about how hard it is to leave stuff out, because you find out so much, and it's so interesting to you. How do you keep the book from reading like a big research project?
Well, I hope I achieved that.
Yes.
I mean, it's interesting. I always thought the reason people put too much in was that they were showing off.
Yes.
I think the real danger is that I found I was so in love with those technical details that I was a bad judge of how much other people might love to know about some of these things. I think for me, what really helped was just multiple readers, layers of readers who said to me, I'm going to sleep here in chapter whatever. So no, that is really, really a danger. The other thing is that it's, action and people are the only things we're ever really reading for. No one is reading to learn about how people adjusted their air supply in a Mark V diving suit. There are lots of sources for that information. So I guess one standard I tried to set with myself is just, is this part of action? Is this actually necessary? Is something really happening here? And if you revise enough, a lot of that extraneous stuff falls away.
Now this Anna Kerrigan is your wonderful protagonist here. She doesn't call herself a feminist, probably doesn't even think of herself as a feminist.
I'm not sure I don't even know if that word was, I had never encountered it in my research from that time.
But she clearly is, right?
I mean, she believes that she should be able to do what a man can do, and as far as I'm concerned, anyone who believes that is a feminist, because that's what the word means, really.
And tell us about this this job I'd never heard of that she takes on and how dangerous it is. How did you discover that?
Well, Anna, so there are 3 protagonists in the book, and Anna is a 19-year-old, I want to say girl, but really she's an adult. And at that time, I think a 19-year-old was something closer to an adult. She begins doing industrial work at the Navy Yard, as so many women did, although her work is actually sort of dull. She's measuring small parts. She sees someone in a Mark V diving suit, which is the iconic sort of suit that we would all picture, I think, although it's not really current anymore. And she becomes fixated on the idea of diving. In a way, it happened very similarly for me, when the fixation on wanting to write about diving. I was researching the Brooklyn Navy Yard, and I found a little reminiscence in a naval journal by a guy who had been a civilian diver at the yard. And he talked about how the air supply was manually produced. So think about that. You're 30 feet underwater, and 2 guys going like this are all that is providing oxygen to you.
And you're in like what we would think of more of as a spacesuit, right?
It looks very much like a spacesuit. Yeah, it's the spherical hat, as they call it, the very heavy rubberized canvas, the lead boots. It weighs 200 pounds. For looking at a photograph of this gentleman in that outfit, I felt a kind of thrill that I have learned to watch very closely, because it means not that I'm going to dive, which I have never done and I'm afraid to do, no, but that this is sort of a portal into something fictional. And my fascination with it only grew as I fell in with a bunch of Army diving veterans. Early on, again, this is before Goon Squad came out, I went to a reunion in Virginia of this Army diving veterans organization. They meet every other year. They're wonderful. Most of them are Vietnam vets. There were a couple from the Korean War, and there was actually one diver there from World War II. He dove in Cherbourg in the harbor, helping to clear out debris that the Germans exploded there, a guy named Jim Kennedy. Anyway, I attended this and interviewed a lot of these people, which was really fun. And one of the attractions of this reunion is that anyone who wants to can wear the old equipment and dive in a tank. And oddly, this Mark V was current into the Vietnam War. So it actually had a very long period of...
This 200-pound thing?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And even people, so another person who helped me a lot was the first female Army diver, a woman named Andrea Motley Crabtree, who's a marvelous human being. And she even wore and trained the Mark V, and she didn't dive until the 80s. So it's still used in various ways. Anyway, I was dressed in it. My sources, my 2 wonderful diving sources who both dove during the Vietnam War, dressed me in the Mark V. Needless to say, I did not dive, because that would have been surely the end of me. But I watched people dive in the tank in that old equipment, which was amazing. Anyway, it became a tremendously important part of the book, and also a real source of sort of mystery and excitement for me in the writing process.
It's very exciting in the book, too. I mean, when you realize how dangerous it is, it's dark.
Yeah.
Explain maybe a little bit more about what are they doing down there?
Well, civilian divers at the Brooklyn Navy Yard were both patching and repairing ships from underneath, because there were only 6 dry docks, even in that huge shipyard. So a lot of things could be done while in the water. It was a big deal to bring a ship into the dry dock. A lot of times also what they were doing was just examining the ships to see what exactly was wrong. They also did a lot of salvage work. So they brought things up from the bottom of the bay, of Wallabout Bay, which is where the Navy Yard, the Brooklyn Navy Yard is right on the East River in New York. And so they did a lot of that. They did various things. Basically, they're underwater engineers. And another thing that civilian divers did that's kind of amazing in New York was that the SS Normandie, which was a French ocean liner that we seized when France fell to the Nazis, was docked alongside Manhattan on the Hudson River, and it caught fire. And so the firefighters poured water into it, and it sank. So it was a bit of a screw-up, really, on the firefighters' part, which was following a screw-up on the part of the people who were trying to convert it into a troop ship. Anyway, sabotage was suspected, but it wasn't that. It was just human error. Anyway, here's this huge ocean liner lying at the bottom of the Hudson River, and a civilian diving program was initiated to raise the ship, which consists of making it airtight, first of all, then pumping out all the water. It floats to the top. They then brought it to the Brooklyn Navy Yard to turn it into a troop ship, at which point they learned that it was too damaged for them to actually do that. But basically, New York was crawling with civilian divers, and it was a very little documented program, which worked very well for my purposes, because while no women dove for the Navy until the 70s and the Army until the 80s, no one really knows who these civilian divers were. So that gave me my window of opportunity to get Anna, one of my protagonists, underwater in a diving suit.
Yeah. Now, there's this whole gangster plot running through the novel, too. That must have been fun.
It was amazingly fun.
You've got this kind of noir tone. You've got cliffhanger endings. Well-dressed killers say things like, "One more word like that, and I'll toss you off the pier myself, and you'll tell it to the fishes." What was that like to sort of mimic and even sometimes, I think, parody those old gangster films or stories?
It was incredibly fun. I mean, crime is just an inherently rich realm for the fiction writer. You know, the stakes are immediately high. There's a sense of danger. And so that automatically is of interest. My grandfather was a cop in Chicago on the South Side and ultimately became a commander. Oh. So I would listen to his stories when I was a little girl. And so I think that kind of adds to my love of that stuff.
And that was in the 30s?
Yeah.
So this was some great times in Chicago.
Oh, yes. Yes, there's a famous anecdote my uncle tells where my grandfather was with his fedora. He was a very sharp dresser. And in fact, he was one of Truman's bodyguards whenever he would come to Chicago. There are great pictures of Truman and my grandfather's partner all in their fedoras. Amazing. But my grandfather was sort of watching people walk by on the street looking kind of dour. And my uncle said, "What are you doing, Dad?" And he said, "Trying to separate the good guys from the bad guys." So I guess I grew up hearing stuff like that. Nice. But in fact, the real reason that I ended up writing so much about gangsters in this book was suggested by the research I was doing before I had a plot or anything like it back in 2005 to 2010. Because one thing I found in not just the conversations with people who worked at the Navy Yard, but also just elderly New Yorkers with good memories. I interviewed anyone I could find who could talk about New York, you know, in the 30s and 40s. A lot of people seem to encounter gangsters in the course of their normal lives to a degree that seems very odd to us now. Yeah. I think, or certainly to me.
It's becoming more normal now.
Yes, you might say so. So for example, there was a guy that I interviewed who was part of a very wealthy Jewish manufacturing family, and they lived in a fancy apartment building that had a name on Central Park. And Frank Costello, a very famous crime boss, lived in the apartment building also. So my source was mentioning, well, yeah, there was a movie star, there were these bankers, there was Frank Costello, he was a gangster. And I was picturing, you know, a co-op board in New York now, you know, contemplating someone whose job title basically was gangster. I don't think that person would end up in the building. But this would come up again and again. You know, people who were musicians would talk about playing at gangster clubs. There was a lot of talk of gangsters. And as I did more research, I learned that, of course, that had to do with prohibition and the fact that the organized crime got organized to run the liquor business for a country that still wanted to drink. And therefore, they became sort of folded, so-called gangsters became folded into mainstream life in a way that seems very odd to us now. And that really held on even after Prohibition. Of course, it ended in '33. It was still true in the 40s.
That is amazing.
So, it seemed to come about really more that way. But I had a ball writing about Dexter Stiles. Well, actually, in a way, the two male protagonists are Dexter Stiles, who is clearly a gangster and a sort of nightclub impresario, and then Eddie Kerrigan, who's Anna's father, who's a part of a sort of different criminal realm, which is the Irish waterfront, which was a very corrupt area, and that corruption was immortalized in the movie On the Waterfront, which is derived from a series of newspaper exposés of the corrupt Irish waterfront. The ethnicity was kind of removed for the film, but it really was this very sort of clanishly Irish and Irish-American bunch of very corrupt union bosses who did not look out for the interests of their membership, and were incredibly, very capricious about who worked and who didn't, and usually the ones who worked were the ones who were giving them kickbacks. So Eddie Kerrigan, Anna's father, is part of that world, and then Dexter Stiles is more part of what was known as the Syndicate, which had a more Italian feeling, although in no way were they all Italian. And in fact, you hear funny things about Irishmen calling themselves, Genosa, and Italian guys calling themselves O'Brien. Everyone trying to fit in with the group that they're, the American reinvention was going on all the time there.
Could you read a passage from that
Sure.
part of the novel?
So this is just a little bit about how Dexter ended up becoming a gangster. For Dexter Stiles, the existence of an obscure truth recessed behind an obvious one and emanating through it allegorically was mesmerizing. It was what had first intrigued him at age 15 about two men who came every third Monday to see his father at his Coney Island restaurant. Another man came less often, always in brand new spats, a red handkerchief gushing from his breast pocket. Dexter's father always went behind the bar to pour this man's brandy rather than have the barkeep do it. The blank face his pop wore after these visitations betrayed humiliation and anger, and Dexter knew better than to ask what they meant. But he was drawn to the men, a smoldering of dim feeling behind their eyes, a heaviness to their hands when they gave him a pat or a swat. He curried their favor, refilling their glasses, lingering at their tables when his father wasn't watching. They took notice of him gradually, with a mute animal awareness. Later, when men who'd fought the Great War returned, Dexter recognized in their fractured gazes and somnolent movements something of what he'd first admired in Mr. Q's men. By then, he knew what it meant: intimacy with violence.
It's nice, very nice. I had no idea that you worked on the novel for so long, that it predated other novels of yours that I'd read.
Well, definitely the research did. Yes. I didn't really start writing this until 2012, okay. But that period from 2005 to 2010, when I was interviewing a lot of people in their 80s, and those are interviews obviously you can't postpone.
Right.
In fact, Jim Kennedy, the World War II diver that I interviewed at that reunion, had wonderful stories to tell about his time in Cherbourg. And I asked him if he had ever met a female diver, and he said he had dived in Cherbourg with a female Russian woman. I mean, obviously, a female Russian. And of course, the Russian women did everything. And I felt like there might be more to the story than what he was saying to this large group of people who were of men, and then me, all listening to him. So we had a plan to speak again on the phone, and I thought maybe I would learn more about the Russian lady. But Jim Kennedy, in perfect health in our conversation, passed away very suddenly, and we were never able to have that conversation. So there was a certain urgency. But yes, I was working on the Keep, and then on Goon Squad. And I would go so far as to say that my preoccupation with time in Goon Squad to some degree came from this research and talking to so many people toward the ends of their lives, yes. But also that experience of reading Lucille Colkin's letters, knowing the end of her story, right. I think became a kind of technique that I brought to Goon Squad. I wondered if I could write a whole narrative in which we more often than not know the end before we know the beginning.
Right.
I think it really came from that moment in part.
Fascinating. When you work on a book or an issue or a subject or a story so long, how do you know when it's done?
Well, in a certain way, it isn't. I mean, I'm still correcting mistakes, and I can promise you, if I sat down and read this book, I would edit heavily. I know I would. That's why I'm very careful not to do that.
So when does your editor finally just wrest it away from you?
I mean, there are various, and I'm sure just like with writing for a newspaper, it's...
No, the deadline comes and you're done. That's it.
Well, that's kind of the same thing in a way,
Really?
in that ultimately, if you're going to publish at a certain time,
yes.
you have sets of page proofs, but finally they have to take them away.
Stop.
But in a way, those are about little refinements.
Yes.
I mean, as I was working on the first draft during the kind of bad year and a half where I felt really pessimistic, one of the things that was troubling me was that I felt like I couldn't seem to, I kept writing and writing, but instead of feeling the sort of compression that I'm hoping for with
yes.
fiction, which really is an act of compression
yes.
at its base, I kept feeling like things just kept getting bigger. And that was really a worry. But it turned out, and part of that is just the crazy way that I write first drafts by hand and very blindly. I needed to sort of cast out a very wide net to find the elements that I needed for my story. And then once I knew where it was going to end and sort of what the end would be, by the time I began the big second draft. But in terms of knowing that every sentence is right, I got as close to that as I could at that particular time, but I'm sure if I read it now, I would make changes.
Oh, wow. Who do you read for inspiration?
Oh gosh, well, I mean, every book has sort of I find a kind of constellation of books that it's part of.
Yes.
And so for this book, that was kind of free-ranging because in a way I combined two genres here. One is the noir, as you pointed out, so that obviously exists in film, but also in a lot of cheesy detective fiction,
yes.
and some really good detective fiction.
Yes, a lot of fun ones.
Yeah, Raymond Chandler, I think, was really important for me, partly because his protagonist, Philip Marlowe, is so, I feel like he just captures the kind of bleakness and sense of existential threat in the noir that's so compelling.
Yes.
And then the other genre that I'm working with is really the sea story. And I thought, can I really do that? Can I actually fuse these two? But what I realized is that actually they have so much in common. They're almost identical. It's just that one is in the natural world and one is in an urban world. They're realms where a sense of existential threat exists at all times, right. And where a pocket of humanity is surrounded by a kind of darkness, which in a sea story, and a threat. In a sea story, it's obviously the sea, right. And in the noir, it's urban life. It's the solitude and the kind of vague menace that we associate, or that genre associates with an urban landscape. Right. So I read a lot in both of those genres. I revisited Moby Dick, which I absolutely...
It's really good, isn't it?
It is amazing.
I know. I wish people would read it again.
And the whale parts are great.
Yes, it's really exciting.
I never thought I would love to hear about whale blubber at that length, but I did. It was amazing, amazing.
Yeah.
And then, but also, like, I read a lot of Patrick O'Brien. Those are fantastic.
Yeah, those are fun.
They're like catnip.
Fun.
So lots of great sea stories, and also great noir, and a lot of cheesy detective fiction that you really couldn't publish now. It's sexist, it's racist, it's impossible. But for sort of lingo and elements of daily life,
right.
very
the
useful.
Tone that you get a whiff of in the book, yeah.
Yeah.
Very nicely done.
And I also read a lot of nonfiction, of course.
Yes.
I mean, and one genre of that are just sea survival stories, of which there are many, many. I mean, so many ships were torpedoed during World War II, and there were people who were torpedoed more than once in a day.
Oh.
And if they lived to tell their story, they did better than a lot of people. But these are amazing stories of incredible heroism and just bravery and strength and leadership, and then also stories of absolute disarray and kind of the way madness can come so quickly if you don't feel the sea in its enormity can really play in a bad way with the mind.
Insanity,
and so there are a lot of those stories too. So all of that. I think, at a certain point when I realized I wasn't going to be doing a lot of structural innovation here, which I tried for early on and discovered was dead on arrival, I thought, this is really a story where the extremes are not going to happen in the structure, but in the action.
Yes.
And so it was really fun to write about, a shipwreck, survival at sea, murders, and in a way, when I realized that was the world of this book, I thought it's not surprising that I'm not using fragmentation and irony. I mean, what place does that have in a shipwreck, really?
Right. So the whole PowerPoint shipwreck got taken out.
Well, at the beginning, I thought I would have a sort of ironic narrator kind of winking at the reader about the fact that we all know this was a long time ago. I mean, I have a writing group that luckily exists to kind of slap me out of certain bad ideas. And the first time I brought in something that had that, they were like, it really takes us out of it. Yeah. And the second time, they said, yeah, still really not enjoying this. And then the third time, they said, I find that it makes me really angry when you do that.
Just tell the damn story.
This is really not what I want my readers to be feeling, so I think I'm going to have to move away from that.
Exactly. Let's hear from some of your readers. Would you take some questions? There are 2 mics, one here and one here. Please just come up to the mic, and Jennifer will point to you.
Hi. My favorite work of yours is Black Box, actually. And I just wondered if you'd ever thought about making that into a book, expanding that.
So Black Box is a novella that I wrote in tweets about a female spy. It's actually a character from Goon Squad, a minor character who is functioning as a civilian spy. I hope that will be part of my next book, which I may or may not work out, but if it does, it will be sort of a companion to Goon Squad, using various peripheral characters and hopefully creating out of that something that is not just a tepid echo, but something of interest unto itself. So we'll see.
Fantastic. It's a compelling read, even aside from the reading it as 140 characters character. I just loved it.
Thank you so much. Well, keep your fingers crossed.
I also love that story, so that'd be awesome. I was going to ask you a plot-specific question, but my friend told me that'd be unfair to the audience. So
if you ask it in veiled terms without using names, I've gotten kind of good at answering those questions.
Great, I can do that. So A Visit from the Goon Squad is one of my favorite books, and I know there's this sort of sliding doors effect feeling with the characters, or the choices they make, and they're kind of reflecting back on what if, which kind of scared the hell out of me when I read it, but it was thrilling as well. And then, but Manhattan Beach is a little bit different, but at the end of the book, maybe I was reflecting for Anna, because she makes a big decision towards the end of the book. Mm-hmm. And I admit, I felt a little bit cheated by it when I read it. I was a little upset, because I was feeling, what if it had gone differently, or she made a different choice? And I was wondering, for you as a writer, how you approach these, sort of the responsibility of these choices.
Okay, that's a good challenge for me to figure out how to answer this without you guys knowing what on earth we're talking about. But I'm going to answer generally, which is actually the true answer and also doesn't give anything away. I think I know what choice you're talking about. And what I can say to you is that my goal always is to find the thing I haven't thought of. So if there are a few obvious courses of action for a character, those had better not be any of the choices that character makes. I'm not interested in something I can think of as I'm moving toward it. I want to think of the thing that didn't pop into my head until the moment it actually happened on the page. Trying to access that kind of unconscious spontaneity is the whole reason that I slog through writing a 1,400-page first draft by hand for Manhattan Beach. There are many reasons not to do that, I can promise you. One of which is just having to read it, because my handwriting is illegible. The reason to do it is to try to weave my way among the choices that I can imagine ahead of time to find a path that I hadn't thought of. The choice that character makes is the one that seems not to exist. And that's why she does it. Because to me, narratively, that is what's interesting. I'm not, my goal is never to make a political point of any sort in my work. I'm also a journalist, and I feel like that feels like the more appropriate realm for that sort of thing. To me, with fiction, my concerns are really aesthetic. What is going to be surprising and what is going to be unexpected for the reader?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Look at Me, Visit from Goon Squad, and Manhattan Beach all feature multiple protagonists as opposed to just one. What would you say drove you to that storytelling device over and over, and what advantages do you think it gives over just a singular, limited narrative?
I'm assuming everyone heard that. So why multiple plot lines? I mean, I think part of it is just a kind of general wish to do as much as possible. I just feel like and actually that also has a kind of aesthetic quality to it, in that if I feel like we sort of get someone, if there's a way in which I feel like a character is sort of clear in some way, my goal is not to just stay there. My goal is to now do something different. So because if you think about the complexity of life and of perception, I mean, all of us are sitting in this room. Each of us has our own individual history, and we're here sharing this moment together, and we're all perceiving it in our own ways. That's just exponentially complicated. So my goal as a fiction writer is to try to suggest as much of that complication as I can in a compelling, hopefully entertaining way. So complication is the goal. And if I've established something, my impulse is to move away from it and try to bring more into the picture. And I would have to say my models here really are the 19th century novelists, who did a tremendous amount in single books and had a kind of fluidity that it is sometimes hard for us to even remember. I think when we think of those books, we think of 19th century fiction as being kind of conventional, but it's really not. I mean, or at least not by our contemporary standards. They switch points of view, they move among characters, they fly through time, and that kind of freedom to do as much as possible while still remaining compelling and hopefully entertaining is the whole job, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Here, let's try this side and then.
So you mentioned that for Manhattan Beach, you found a lot of errors, and with each new printing, you want to make corrections, and I found that very refreshing. I was wondering, if you reprint, do you have any sort of acknowledgements page addressing those changes? And also, would you consider making creative changes with a new round of printing as opposed to just technical changes?
Well, I love the thought of making creative changes. There is one that I want to make, actually, on my list, but the problem is that the publisher does not want to hear that. And the danger is that you start to seem like you're sort of, what's the word? Or being a little bit unreasonable or even a little bit unstable. Like if I suddenly said, I don't like the way this character is coming off, I need to revisit this whole thing, they would say, Jenny, you should maybe see a therapist. I mean, the book is published and it's time to move on. But but that's one reason I do not reread my own books. I mean, first of all, why would I? But really, I know that it would put me in a position of feeling unhappy, because surely I would find things that could be better. That said, your question about would I put in an acknowledgement stating the changes? Not really. It's not a newspaper where I need to acknowledge that through an editing error, through operator error, which is always the case when it comes to my fiction. I got X, Y, or Z wrong. I feel more like, no, let's let that go, and now you're reading the corrected version. Great. But this one thing I might want to change has to do with shoring up something that many readers have questioned whether it was actually plausible. And it in fact very much is. And so I feel like there may be an easy fix where I can somehow establish that at another point. But I haven't even broached this with my editor yet. We'll see. I'm looking for the right moment.
Thank you.
One last question.
Do you have any tips, suggestions, or advice for how to form like a writing group with people who kind of nourish you and look over your writing, and people who inspire you with their own writing, and like how would you suggest forming that network?
That's such a great question. I mean, being part of a writing group has really been a very important part of my writing life. I wrote one book in a vacuum, and it was dead on arrival. So I don't want to make that mistake again, and I had been working on it for 2 or 3 years. So I think the key is, first of all, taking any sort of class or workshop and our writing group began as a paid workshop, actually. Some of us were paying one of the people there to lead the writing group, and after a few years, she wanted to bring work in, so, you know, needless to say, it was time to stop paying her if we were also going to be workshopping her work. I don't think it matters whether you're working in the same genre or even whether you necessarily adore each other's work. What really matters is a sort of an agreement on an approach and a kind of goodwill that means that everyone that is on your side, they genuinely want you to succeed, which is really important and can't be taken for granted, but will be honest. And so how to find those people, there's trial and error. We've had some chemistry that didn't work at times, and you know, we tend to stay small. There are only 6 or 7 of us. One Skypes in from California. It's only one guy, I'm sorry to say. I'd love to have more. So it's finding that chemistry, but I think a couple of things I would say is we only read aloud. So there's no homework, there's no pretending you've read it a little more carefully than you really had time to. We have the experience all at once, and I find that to be a great method. There's a natural triage that happens when all you have time to do is make a few little notes about what's really important, and I find that it's, you know, the most important things rise to the surface, and it's less likely that you get caught up in details that don't really matter. Storytelling began as an oral tradition, and there's nothing like reading your work to a group to remind you of that. Sometimes that's a happy experience. Sometimes it's really bad. I'll come in there with things that I think are going to work, and I can feel this kind of leaden, glazed feeling coming over the room, and I think, oh my God, it's not working at all. But it's important to know that, and reading aloud is a great way of finding that out. But I think I would suggest taking a workshop, taking a class, and trying little by little to pull together some people that can meet and be this kind of support for each other. I highly, highly recommend it.
Thank you.
And thank you. Such a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you.
Really
thank you all.
Great.
Fun.